We've all heard of Napoleon Bonaparte, the great French emperor who once controlled most of Europe and waged war on Russia. But what if I told you that he wasn't actually French? No. This famous general and monarch was actually from an island in the Mediterranean. But how did he get to be one of the most famous figures in European history? Well, let's find out in today's video. Who really was Napoleon Bonaparte? Napoleon was born on the island of Corsica on August 15, 1769. Yes, he wasn't even born in France. At the time, Corsica had just recently become a part of France, only a few years earlier in 1755. His father, Carlo, was a member of the local nobility, and his mother, Maria, was from an old Italian family. So Napoleon was not just a Corsican. In fact, he didn't even know any French until he was 10 years old. As a kid, he attended a military school in his home island, but later on he would go to mainland France to receive further military training. This was important because at the time it was almost impossible to rise in rank in the military if you were unborn in France. However, Napoleon's military career started off rather uneventfully. He spent most of his early years serving in small posts in various French colonial territories, such as Martinique. These were far away from the action in metropolitan France, which is why he decided to return to France in 1785 and try his luck in the French military there. But despite his humble beginnings, Napoleon would soon make a name for himself as a brilliant artillery commander during the French Revolution. People often forget that before Napoleon came to power, France had been through a period of civil war known as the French Revolution, which completely changed the political and social structure of France. It was during this time that Napoleon gained fame as a military leader and rose through the ranks very quickly. For example, he played a crucial role in the siege of Toulon in 1793, helping to drive back the British and Royalist forces who had taken over the city. This and other similar actions led to his rapid promotion, and eventually his appointment as commander of the Army of Italy in 1796. Under his leadership, the French army achieved a number of stunning victories against the Austrians, which established him as a national hero and made him famous throughout Europe. It was at this point in his career that Napoleon developed his reputation as a brilliant tactician and strategist. He was also a charismatic leader, who was able to inspire his troops to great feats of bravery and loyalty. After his successes in Italy, Napoleon went on to conquer much of northern Africa, defeating the Ottoman Turks and bringing Egypt under French control. But as the French Revolution gave way to the French Republic, he began to turn on his former revolutionary allies, purging them from power and establishing himself as first consul. In 1799, though technically still a republic, this was essentially a dictatorship with Napoleon as its head. However, despite his controversial rise to power, Napoleon's domestic policies were relatively progressive for their time. He introduced a number of reforms aimed at modernizing and stabilizing French society, including the establishment of a new legal code, the Napoleonic Code, which was based on the principles of the French Revolution, and is still in use in many countries today. He also introduced a number of economic and educational reforms. Of course, he is perhaps best remembered for his military campaigns, which saw him conquer much of Europe and make French culture and language dominant on the continent. But as his empire grew, so did the opposition to him. Eventually, in 1814, he was forced to abdicate the throne and was exiled to the island of Elba, off the coast of Italy. But this didn't last long. A year later, he escaped and returned to France, where he briefly reclaimed the throne. But at the famous Battle of Waterloo in 1815, he suffered a decisive defeat by a coalition of British, Dutch, German, and other European forces. He then went into exile again, this time on the remote island of St. Helena, in the South Atlantic, where he lived out the remainder of his life. So do you think Napoleon was a hero or a villain? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to subscribe for more videos about amazing history.